Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American sannyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American sannyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her guru, His Holiness Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji.
Welcome everyone to Inspiration and Transformation from the holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the land of Rishikesh, India. It's sweet because it reminds me actually of my grandmother. Because when I first came to India, I had been here just a few months. And I went back to LA and I went to visit my grandmother. And I spent, I don't know, an hour, maybe 2 hours with her. And when I left, I spoke to my uncle on the way going back to my parents' house for my grandmother. He and I have always been very close, and he was laughing, and I said, what happened? And in the interim, since I had left seeing my grandmother and speaking to him, he had spoken to her. And obviously the whole family was very concerned, like, what's happened? My God, she's left America. One minute she was in the midst of getting a Ph.D., and the next minute now she's wanting to live in an ashram in Rishikesh. And, she who was never religious now suddenly wants to just live in this ashram. And so the whole family was very concerned. So my uncle had asked my grandma, how is she? Because I had gone to see my grandma first, straight from the airport. And evidently my grandma had said, well, she looks okay. And of course that just made my uncle more concerned because, you know that there's another shoe that's going to drop. And he said, well, but what do you mean she looks okay? And my grandma repeated, well, she looks okay, but, and my uncle was like, but what? And my grandma finally said, well, but she's just happy all the time. It's so funny, and yet it's also kind of sad because if I had spent the hour or two with my grandma constantly checking my watch and saying, God, Grandma, I really got to go. I'm about to hit rush hour and, I got to get home and I've got all these things to do and I just got off the plane and, oh my God, this or oh my God, that. She would have said, yeah, she's great. Perfect. 25 plus years later, say, what's the secret? I don't think it's one thing. I mean, if I had to just say one thing, I would say it's the grace of God, the grace of the Guru, the grace of Ganga. But that's pretty amorphic and not necessarily so implementable. So, given that grace is there for everyone and that grace doesn't discriminate and that grace is there for with all of you, let me see if I can put that into a way that's more specifically implementable. I think the core piece of it is really what we were talking about with suffering, which is a willingness to just be open to and with whatever the present moment is presenting. I spent a lot of the first 25 years of my life trying to not feel what I was feeling. And whether I was using food or alcohol or drugs or sex, there wasn't Facebook or, anything like that at that time. But whatever numbing opportunities I had at hand, whether using any of those or just mentally checking out, I did whatever I could to not feel what I was feeling. And to use substances or relationships to not feel what the present moment was making me feel. Whether it was anger, whether it was sadness, whether it was pain, whatever it might have been. I didn't want to feel it. And so I turned to all of these different ways to not feel. And I think a major thing that has shifted is I'm no longer afraid of feeling anything. There's no longer anything that arises in me that any part of me feels like I don't want to feel that, and that I need to therefore push it away in some way. And so I think that enables me to therefore respond to each moment with the joy and the gratitude for that moment, even if it's not necessarily bringing me something that I would have chosen if I had a magic wand. But to be able to be present in that moment, knowing that whatever it is, it's all okay. And again, not that I would choose it. Not that there isn't pain or sadness or anger, there is. It's not that I've stopped having those experiences, it's just that they no longer scare me. They no longer are something that make me want to not feel them. And what I've noticed with emotions is when you're not afraid of them and you're not trying to numb them, they don't actually grab you nearly as hard. They actually tend to kind of flow like a wave that comes in and it peaks and it goes. And you'll notice this with the pain of loss. I mean, you're experiencing a very profound and very deep loss. And there's going to be pain, sadness, anguish, grief. But there's also going to be joy, because emotions are very fluid. And as a wave of pain or sadness arises, and then it dissipates, it shifts into, for example, a wave of joy. As you think about that person who you've lost that was a wave of anguish, as they are now in front of your eyes, suddenly you're full of joy because you see them and you feel them. And then maybe that joy shifts to anger. An anger that the mind says makes no sense, but nonetheless, it's there. How dare you? How dare you keep smoking, eating junky food, not wearing your seatbelt? I mean, whatever it may have been that precipitated us losing them, there's anger. Or just anger at the universe. How dare you? And then that may lead itself into a moment of even just deep laughter as you sort of hear your own voice scolding this person you love of the same thing that you had scolded them for 40 or 50 years. And then there's again a moment. And they're like waves of the ocean, and they arise and they peak and they crash and they change and they arise but they don't drown you as long as you allow them to come. And I think that's one of the key secrets. And I think gratitude is another one. I find myself just infinitely grateful all the time. I find the universe so incredibly giving. And I find myself such an undeserving, and I don't mean that in any kind of personal belittling sort of way, but just in a really just honest, aware sort of way, just a very undeserving being of the grace and the blessings. And so I find myself just constantly in a state of awe and gratitude at the way that the universe just keeps showering blessings upon us through really no merit of our own. I mean, we're just here, and the universe just keeps giving us all of these blessings. And I think those two things are probably key to that smile. You know, when we lose a loved one, it gives us really, along with the anguish and pain, such an incredible opportunity to connect with that being soul to soul and energy to energy rather than body to body. And that doesn't take away the loss of the physical body, but it reminds us that we've been given this opportunity to actually drop into the part of us that isn't our body in order to connect with the part of them that isn't their body. So our physical body can connect with their physical body. Our intellectual mind connects with their intellectual mind. We have a conversation or a debate or whatever it may be. Our emotional heart connects to their emotional heart. But our soul connects to their soul. And when they no longer have a body or a brain or that personal emotional heart, they still have soul. They still are soul. And so it sends us into the soul of ourselves to connect with them. And that's a very beautiful opportunity. Not that it takes away the pain of loss any, but it's a yes and rather than an either or.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. Om Times Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Alaya, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Hi, this is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit RAIN.org, that's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back to Inspiration and Transformation. I'm so glad to have you all back here with me. Well, as far as a definition, it's quite simple. Unconditional meaning no conditions. The only way to do that is to love essence rather than or in addition to form. Meaning, if I only love the form, if I only love someone's physical form, now on the most superficial level, that would be just lust or attraction, that I just love what it looks like. But sometimes it goes a little deeper. Sometimes I love what it says to me, what it does, how it makes me feel, how it treats me, the money it brings home. And there's a lot of things other than just what a body looks like. But if all I love is that body, whether it's the appearance, whether it's how it acts toward me or in the world, whether it's the type of status or wealth or whatever else it may have around it, charisma, what it can do, its abilities. If all I love is that form, well, form is constantly changing. That's the nature of form. The nature of nature is it changes constantly. So if all I'm loving is form, well, then it can't possibly be unconditional, because as that form stops looking like or acting like or treating me like that which I loved, I'll no longer love it. If I love the person who is this very charismatic, strong, and macho this and whatever, and then the person ends up getting sick or injured or, God forbid, aging or whatever else may happen during the course of time, well, then suddenly I no longer love. So that's not unconditional love. That's a mix of attraction and lust and need and desire and all of those sorts of things. Unconditional love is, I may appreciate the form. I certainly may look at someone and say, oh, God, you're so beautiful. But what I'm really loving is essence, which doesn't change. Soul, spirit doesn't change. It means someone I love may make a life decision that I really don't approve of, but I love them anyway. If you don't love them anyway, it's not real love. Because then all you're loving is what that body's going to do, the actions that it does, the choices it makes. If someone I say I love acts in a way, speaks in a way, lives in a way that I don't agree with or I don't approve of, and I no longer love them, well, it wasn't unconditional. I may certainly not approve of their actions, because remember, unconditional love is of essence, of soul. It doesn't mean I'm going to love everything you do. This is a place where we misunderstand it. right? Sometimes we'll say to someone, "Ah, but you're supposed to love me unconditionally." Well, that doesn't mean that I'm going to love everything you do. It doesn't mean I'm going to love everything you say. If parents really love their children unconditionally, it doesn't mean that when the child comes home having been, expelled from school for lighting a teacher on fire, that the mother's going to say, "Oh, I love that. That's so great. God, I love that you did that." But it means that she's going to not stop loving the child. And there's a very important distinction. Unconditional love is about essence, soul, divinity. So even though you lit that teacher on fire, which makes me so angry, and I disapprove of it so deeply and fully, and you are grounded for the next 6 months, nonetheless, I don't love you any less. My love for you has not wavered. You are no less worthy of my love. You are no less deserving of my love. I'm not going to make broad statements about what a worthless human being you are, because you're not. But I'm also not going to approve of the action. And that's the important distinction, is unconditional love is of who you are, core, essence, divinity, soul. The stuff that we reserve judgments over. We may approve of it, we may not, we may appreciate it, we may not, we may agree with it, we may not. We may enjoy it, we may not. That's of form, of body. And it's an important distinction, especially with children, especially with spouses, that we should always aim for unconditional love. It's a good question for Valentine's Day anyway, right? We should aim for unconditional love. As the one who loves, I want to be able to love you unconditionally. And what that means is that I need to drop into my soul that loves your soul, that loves your essence, that loves the divine in you, even if I very strongly disapprove of some choices you make. And that I'm able in the relationship to make it really clear that I don't love you any less. My love for you has not wavered. And your choices have consequences. And I don't think this is wise. I'm going to try to convince you to think about something in a different way. Not because I love you less, but because we are both soul, spirit, and form. We're both. And when you're in relationship with someone, you've got relationships on so many levels, even with the same being. The dilemma that happens and the mistake that a lot of us make, especially with children, especially with spouses and loved ones like that, is we make statements about the entirety of the being based simply on something that has to do with form. I hate you. You are worthless. You are horrible. You are this. You are that. Which is a statement about the full pervasiveness of that person's being. When really all that's happened is we disapprove of, or we have been hurt by, an action or a word or a choice made by the body, the form. Maybe precipitated by the ego, the ignorance or desire or greed or all of these things. But none of that has anything to do with soul or essence or consciousness. So it's really important as parents especially for children to know that their worthiness as beings on planet Earth, that the core of who they are is not about the action that has just gotten them grounded for 6 months. That you still love them. They're still divine. And they're grounded. Because they made a choice that you need to make sure they never make again. And as a way of helping them understand the law of karma, right? Actions have consequences. So as lovers, as people who love others on any level, let's always remember that if we ever use the word love or we ever aim toward love, to make sure that it's the deepest level possible, that it's on the level of soul, it's of the fullness of the being of the other, which, by the way, is not limited to human beings. We experience that with trees, with Mother Ganga, with other rivers, with nature, with creation, with animals, with so much. Love isn't limited to a human being who can love us back. Love is our nature. And so to share it is our nature. And so you want to make sure that you don't get limited by that ego that says, I don't love you anymore because you did this or you did that. Let yourself be bigger than that, deeper than that, higher than that, more than that. Give yourself the opportunity to really love, even when your ego is damaged. Ego, even when you're disappointed. Even when you didn't get what you wanted. Can you still love? Can you still find love in you, even with a damaged ego? Even with disappointed expectations? That's the great opportunity we've been given. And that's why unconditional love is just as beneficial, if not more, for the one who's doing the loving as for the one who's being loved. Because to be able to actually love another unconditionally opens our hearts in the most powerfully exquisite way. And again, it doesn't have to be a human being. It can be animals. It can be trees. It can be blades of grass. It can be God, of course. We sing every night, Sabse Unchi Prem Sagai. The highest form of love is love for the divine. So let's use this beautiful excuse opportunity of Valentine's Day to re-remind ourselves what love really is and what the possibilities of it are for each of us, rather than getting co-opted into a holiday that's been hijacked by Hallmark or some other business trying to sell us something.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International, Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. So anybody else ever feel like this? She's walking on a spiritual path. She feels like there's two parts to her, that there's one part that's already over the bridge, that's crossed over fully, and another part that's not even prepared to get on the bridge. This is what you would call true self and ego self. True self is there. It's there. Didn't have to actually go anywhere. It's not like it actually had to cross a bridge. It's just there. It knows it is. It's what we access when we meditate, when we pray. In whatever spiritual experiences that touch us, we're there, yeah. And then there's the ego self that's terrified of that. Because the ego only knows itself as this physical body and as the story that this physical body is living in. Where it's from, what it does, how much money it has. All of the ways that we identify it, that's what the ego knows. If you say to the ego, "Who are you?" well, it'll give you a whole list of who I am, all based on this body. The idea of being more is terrifying to the ego. For you not to be your drama, not to be your story, is scary for the ego. I was talking a few nights ago, maybe last week in here, about a billboard I had seen when I was back in America a few weeks ago for this legal firm, and their website is whohurtyou.com. True story, not a joke. Now, that's one way of identifying. And it's actually how most of us identify. It's how we are encouraged to identify. Who hurt you? Give us a call. Tell us your story. We'll get you money for it. Who hurt you? Come to us. We're primed and we are indoctrinated and we are encouraged to self-identify based on what has happened to us. Where have you been screwed by life? That's your identity. True self over here, or not here, but everywhere. We'll call him here, the one over the bridge, for the sake of the visual metaphor, is saying, but that's not me. That's not who I am. I am soul. yeah, that person who hurt me was hurting so badly. I could feel it. I could know it. I have compassion because I see self in all. Not that it should have happened, not that it's okay that it happened, not that I want it to happen again, but it isn't who I am. Because I existed long before whatever it is happened. I've existed a long time since it happened. It's not who I am. So true self knows. But that's really scary to the ego. Because otherwise the ego is the part that says, well, who am I? And here's how you deal with it. Don't worry. Don't try to force the ego, because the ego is like a child. And anybody who's ever worked with kids knows, the more you try to force them to do something, right? You know, Puja Swamiji always talks about giving what we call sanskaras to our children, values, ethics, and how it happens so frequently. You'll see he'll go to someone's home, the family will come, they'll bow, they'll do pranam, and the kids will come, and the parents want to show that they're very dharmic people, very spiritual. And so they'll tell the kid, pranam karo, do pranam, like bow at the feet of this saint. Now, if they have not already inculcated in the child how to act in the presence of a guru, the kid has no idea. But the parents want the guru to know that they've taught this to their kid. And so they'll take the kid's neck. I've seen it happen 1,000 times. They'll take the kid's neck and they push it into the ground. Bow, pranam karo. To show, see, look how humble and good our kids are. Now, the dilemma with that is from now on, every time these kids see someone in saffron colors, they're going to run and hide in their room because they know this is neck pain time. They have no idea about anything else that's going on, but they know neck pain time. Now, you haven't actually achieved anything. The ego is really similar. You're not going to subdue the ego by pushing on it. You're not going to be able to drag the ego by dragging it. Again, as anybody who's ever tried to drag a kid who's throwing a temper tantrum, what do? They plaster themselves on the ground. Try to move them, right? The more you try to pick them up and get them off the ground, the more they pancake themselves on the ground. The ego is really similar. Don't worry. Let it be. Let it be. Because the truth is, the true self doesn't need the ego to climb over the bridge. The ego can be wherever it is as long as it's not in the driver's seat of the car of your life. You don't have to no longer have an ego in order to live a spiritually rich, deep life. You just have to no longer be controlled by it. So, anchor your awareness in true self. Anchor your awareness in that being for whom there never was a bridge. And when the ego is doing its thing over here, don't try to drag it, don't push it, don't traumatize it any further. Just bow to it. Wave at it, smile at it. I see you. Kids throwing temper tantrums, that's all they want is to be seen. They just want to be seen. I see you. And no, you don't get the keys to the car. We're having a party over here if you'd like to join us. But if not, no problem. I see you. But I'm going to be over here. Because see, you're no longer driving my car. I'm not going to throw you out on the highway going 100 miles an hour. I'm not looking to annihilate you. It's not me versus you. You know, in spirituality, a lot of people talk like that. I'm going to annihilate the ego. You've got to annihilate the ego. And the problem for that I've experienced personally is every time I say that, you know who's listening? My ego. The ego's right in there going, oh, really? Today's the day, huh? And that's the dilemma, is you can't actually have a private conversation away from the ego. So the minute that you tell yourself, yeah, I'm going to show my ego, I'm going to annihilate the thing, all it does is get more and more scared, more and more strong, more and more well-formed, more and more trying to throw that temper tantrum to drag you back. So don't think about annihilation. Think about it like the child in your car. It's part of your package deal of this karmic journey. The ego comes along. But just don't let them drag you or drive you. You live in that space of true self. And every once in a while, you'll notice the ego falls asleep in the back seat. And then you've got a really blissful journey. And sometimes that ego will just take a nap for a really nice long time. And then temporarily it may wake up again, and then something arises and you again address it. And then it goes back into its nap, and your journey continues.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with Inspiration and Transformation. The reason we put tilak on here is to remind us. We were talking about this a bit the other night on Shivaratri. But these two eyes see separation, objectification. They see object. This eye sees the divine in others, in ourselves. It's the eye that sees truth, or sees what we call content or essence rather than form. So she's asked as a follow-up to what we've been talking about, how to make that happen. How do you do that? Well, you keep coming up with ways to remember. Tools and techniques, right? So one very powerful one is literally to apply the tilak. Because as we apply it, we remember, oh God, I'm going to go into my day. I'm going to meet people. I'm going to see them. They're going to be different sizes and shapes and colors. But rather than focusing on that, oh God, let me use this eye and see the truth. Let me see the divine in them. So we put on the tilak. Then whenever you see yourself in the mirror and you see the tilak, or you put your hand up and you feel it, you remember, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be using this eye. Oh yeah. Another way is to come up with things that you do a lot during the day and connect them to whatever habit you want to begin. So for example, we eat food, we drink water or tea or coffee, right? A lot of us have this habit of we're kind of constantly eating something or drinking something. If you can tie spiritual awareness to every time you're going to eat or drink, it gives you a ready-made reminder many, many times a day. So before you eat, just allow yourself, anchor in, remember, I'm spirit. I'm spirit. I'm soul. There's beautiful mantras that we chant before we eat that say, Brahma Panam, Brahma Havir, Brahma Gano, Brahmanahutam, Brahmevatena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhina. Then we say, Aham Vishwanaro Bhutva, Praninam Dehamashvita, Prana Pana Sumayukta, Pachamanam Chaturdavidam. And these mantras remind us that the one I who is eating, the food that is being eaten, the fire in my belly that is going to digest the food, the energy of the food, it is one. It is essentially the divine, taking the divine into the divine, right? All of this separation, this idea that I'm over here and the food's over there and my hydrochloric acid that's going to digest it all is over here. I mean, as though we were somehow different substances, as though where the food came from, that energy of the soil, of the water, of the farmers who planted it, who tilled the soil, who harvested it, as though the energy of the universe that came into that food were separate from the energy of me who's eating it, as though that were separate from the energy of the divine who has created me and created the field and created the farmer. It's all one. It's the divine, feeding the divine to the divine. So maybe you'll choose to recite the mantras to remind you. Maybe you'll just take 5 seconds and just remember it. It's not that you have to chant the mantra to remember it. Maybe you'll just take a moment and just remember, oh yeah, Oh yeah, I'm one. And then you take it in. And if you can actually just start with this habit, every time you're going to eat, every time you're going to drink water, you're not separate from this water. Right? This water is going to go in me and merge with the water of me that I'm constantly giving back to the universe. I sweat, I speak, it comes out of my mouth, it comes out of my pores. I mean, as we live, we're constantly giving water back into the universe, not just when you go to the bathroom, but constantly. We're in this constant exchange of water with the universe. So you take it in, you remember, oh yeah, we're one. I'm drinking myself into myself. Only later to simultaneously to share myself back with myself. Right? So just look for ways, and I find eating and drinking is the easiest because we always eat and drink. And so any habit you want, meditation, slowing down, gratitude, chanting of your mantra, whatever you're trying to inculcate in your life that you do in the morning, you do in the evening, and when you sit in the evening, you realize you forgot all day long. Well, if you can tie it to every time you're going to eat or every time you're going to drink, then you've got all these reminders. And then once you've got that down, tie it into other things. Every time you open your email inbox, right? Every time your phone rings before you answer it, take a moment. There's no rule that you have to answer on the second ring. Right? If they hang up before you get it, you'll call them back. It's not like the days of the old phones that would ring and you had no idea who was calling. Tie it into the phone ringing. Tie it into checking your email, whatever it may be. But choose things that you do a lot. And use them as reminders to drop deep. A phone ringing can be the greatest distraction. But if I tie in just a moment of reconnection, remembrance, this is me calling me, before you answer it, then that distraction actually becomes a reminder. Not to mention that you'll probably be nicer to whoever calls. Okay? So just keep tying it into the life you live and keep remembering. And seeing it in other people, seeing the divine in others, I mean, it's such a great practice. You see others all day long. Go to the grocery store. Walk down the street. Instead of thinking, fat, thin, old, young, fair, dark, male, female. Can you just start to see, what a beautiful form of the divine. Right? It's like that beautiful poem by Namdevji, right? About the dog stealing the chapati. I forget the poem in Hindi. It's a beautiful poem. About the dog coming, stealing a chapati. And he runs after the dog. And it works much better in Hindi, I just can't remember it. But it's a poem by this beautiful mystic who says, the dog comes, the dog steals a chapati, runs away. And this mystic runs after him with a bowl of ghee, saying, don't eat a dry chapati. Let me put some ghee on the chapati because, wow, what an amazing form God has come to me in today. Now, most of us would see a dog who stole our chapati and ran away as a pest, as an annoyance. But ultimately, the teaching, as given to us in this beautiful poem, is, can you even see a dog who stole your chapati as the divine? And I just love this image of him running after the dog with the, katordi of ghee, saying, please, please take some ghee with the chapati, because look how God has come to me today. So this is the bhav we want to cultivate. Whatever it is, whatever happens, can you just see whoever it may be, a human, a dog, as that form of the divine? This brings to a close this hour of inspiration and transformation. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad to be together with you all each week. And I look forward to being together again next Thursday, same time, on Om Times Radio.